It's pervasive and intrusive, negative thoughts. I was so empty.
I had just turned 16. I was told that I needed to drop 20 pounds.
Sophomore year, my coach said, you need to be smaller if you're gonna be of value to the team.
I didn't feel guilty or shameful at all because I wanted to win.
I don't think it's ill-intended, but I think it's dangerous. Anorexia, bulimia,
Anemic body dysmorphia.
It's a pattern that gets worse and worse and worse.
We're all trying to fit into molds that don't really exist.
And this is what we're looking for.
I started to develop physiological implications for all the starvation.
He told me that if I was really trying, I would stick my finger down my throat.
The pressure to perform in sport is high.
Simply stunning.
It can come from many sources.
You know, she's a little unpolished.
Sometimes it leads to great success, but it can also result in permanent harm.
What started as a close night turned into a rout. Canadian champions again.
Kirsten Moortowers is an Olympic medalist with 3 Canadian titles in pair skating.
I am always striving to be better. When that's your mindset, you'll do whatever it takes to win.
Runner Yuki Hebner subscribes to the same theory. An early recruit to Wesleyan University, she competed in cross-country and track and showed promise right away.
I was definitely good at pushing myself, and no one was going to be harder on me than myself. The great thing about running is that it does condition you to take on things that seem impossible.
A lot of high-level athletes tend to be really compliant. They tend to be perfectionists, really driven and motivated. What makes a great athlete actually makes an eating disorder patient.
An eating disorder is a mental illness. It's estimated 10 to 15% of people who suffer will die. That's the highest rate of mortality among all mental illnesses. They affect 1 to 5% of the general population. But in some elite sports, the number is 30%.
There's a lot of research on why athletes may be more at risk of developing an eating disorder. Participating in certain sports that have a lot of emphasis on an aesthetic component, just like figure skating or diving or gymnastics, might place you at greater risk.
We also have to look at sports that are, as we might say, power to weight ratio, so that if you're leaner, you don't have to carry as much weight. That obviously makes you go a little bit faster.
If you are starting to specialize in a sport at a really young age, that has also been identified as a risk factor for not only eating disorders, but other mental health concerns.
Rachel Flatt began skating when she was 3 years old. She excelled quickly.
2010 U.S. champion and the former world junior champion.
But soon learned there were expectations in her sport that went beyond performance.
Before my first world championships, I was told that I needed to drop 20 pounds in 1 week. I was told when I was going through puberty that it looked like I had a sack of potatoes on my body. Honestly, you think of a comment, I've probably heard it.
Those messages are powerful for people to hear, especially if you have a vulnerable self-concept or if you are really striving to be the best in type A, which is so part and parcel with being a really successful athlete.
I needed to feel like it's more in a turn.
An athlete's environment is often integral to their success. The words exchanged there can carry enormous weight.
When you have somebody who you think looks so perfect and is beautiful and is strong, if she deems that whatever body part of hers is unacceptable, then what must she think of me?
I wanted to be faster and I wanted to be more valuable to my team. My college coach wanted me to lose a certain amount of weight.
It was mentioned to me by somebody superior that if I was really trying, I would stick my finger down my throat.
Kirsten and Yuki developed bulimia nervosa.
I lost 10 pounds pretty rapidly. I just had a job and I was gonna do it.
It's overwhelming to think that I have to eat dinner, but I know that once I eat dinner, I need to walk to the bathroom and throw it up. I was only allowing myself to keep 1 apple per day.
I was pretty severely anemic. I came back to school as a junior and I immediately fractured my femur. I mean, it wasn't even a question in my mind. I had broken my femur because I was too heavy. Yeah, my entire sense of self just crumbled around that.
When you can look at yourself and hate it so much that it affects every aspect of your life, that's when, for me at least, it's really a problem.
25 to 35% of people with bulimia attempt suicide.
It's a misery spiral. I think it's easier to live in misery about the eating disorder than to actually live in some of the misery about some of the life things that you don't know how to manage.
There comes a point, however, when it is no longer safe. Emma Brown, an aspiring Olympic runner, lost her battle with an eating disorder in 2018. NCAA Division I runner Alex Davini weighed less than 70 pounds when she died in 2006. The number for American gymnast Christy Henrich read 47 pounds the last time she stepped on the scale before her death.
Every sport has a responsibility to support their athletes, to be able to speak freely, to be able to say if they don't feel good about themselves or their body.
Can I see the wheel?
Yeah.
A coach might be the first point of contact when an athlete has an issue, but their training likely doesn't include eating disorder expertise.
The truth about eating disorders is that they really actually have nothing to do with food and nothing to do with the body, but that food and the body become the manifestation of what's going on with a person at a much deeper level.
I think that control is at the very top of the reason why people develop eating disorders, because you feel like you've lost control of your life.
Choreographer Julie Marcotte knows more about eating disorders than most, having dealt with body image issues herself. But she knows her role as coach, not counselor.
For sure, the second a skater walks through the door, and by behavior, like I recognize it right away. So I try to do positive reinforcement and definitely guide them towards psychologists. It's unbelievable.
As part of Kirsten's team, Julie supported her work with a psychologist. Weekly appointments for a full year led to Kirsten's recovery.
We did so many different things, and one of them was even getting up the nerve for me to step back on a scale. That was something that was really big deal for me. But she helped me to view myself not as Kirsten the figure skater or, you know, all these other personas I had put myself in, and I was just Kirsten the human, simply.
Now that Rachel's figure skating career is over, she's pursuing a PhD in clinical psychology. Her focus is eating disorders, motivated by her athletic experience.
I was definitely the most consistent U.S. skater, both nationally and internationally. And unfortunately, they were wanting me to understand that I needed to change how I looked.
Rachel avoided an eating disorder, and now she wants to help others do the same.
We don't have to sit at a weight that is unhealthy for our bodies and has both short-term impacts on our performance and long-term health consequences. So I hope that we can continue to make all sports take that same approach.
Dr. Judy Goss has also rallied around this cause. A former competitive swimmer, Judy is part of a team hired by Skate Canada to write body image guidelines.
We want to change behavior and let people know what they should do and say in certain situations. People might not say, you need to lose a few pounds. It's really like, how can we build some more, strength for you? Or let's make sure your stamina to be able to carry yourself through the whole program is where it needs to be.
Yuki's attempt to change the culture in her sport took the form of a letter. When she learned that her experience with her coach was not unique, she gathered statements from 25 alumni.
We tried to spell it out for them as much as possible, saying that the policies are insufficient. The problem is much bigger than one coach. There's a complete lack of support system for what is proven to be a very prevalent, very destructive cultural force in the running. There was never any acknowledgement that he had failed in his job because he didn't have the baseline knowledge that was required to do a safe, effective job. That shouldn't be something that we beg for. That should be an understanding.
7 months after Yuki's letter, reforms were finally announced.
I think the reason culture of body dysmorphia and eating disorders on a team had remained buried for so long is that you graduate, and I just felt like I'd woken up from a nightmare and I wasn't gonna revisit, but I couldn't ignore that it was still happening to my teammates.
It's really that kind of bystander effect, that naming the one bully is not going to help. We want to educate all those bystanders so when people aren't around, they're the ones that step up and do and say the right things.
When Yuki was battling her eating disorder, she could not have envisioned how far she's come.
Labeling myself as bulimic was something that I hadn't really been able to do even internally for myself. Because in my mind, I wasn't. I started therapy for my eating disorder, and it's been great. It took me too long to ask for help, and I'm glad that I did, so.
These athletes didn't find help right at their fingertips, but they're fueled to empower others moving forward.
Things would have been very different if we had the self-recognition and been able to ask for help.
If somebody can relate to something that I've experienced, then maybe we can start to have these conversations that can change the culture of sport.